Welcome again to the Life of a Marketer podcast. Today I have a pretty cool guest, Jenn Weber. She works at Mondelez International, which has like a gazillion food brands that you can buy at your supermarket. So I'm excited to have someone from such a large company on here to interview. So I'm going to let Jenn, I'm going to let you take it away. Tell us about what you do, who you are in general terms.
Definitely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenn Weber Krane, and I work at Mondelez. I've been here for just over a year now. I currently work on our everyday candy brands. So that's Sourpatch Kids and Swedish Fish, which, if you're in the US, you're very familiar with. I think a lot of us grew up with these candies as children. And so it's really exciting to come full circle and work on these big, huge, important brands as an adult and bring smiles to everyone's faces. So, how I got here, I think, is another interesting story. Right after undergrad, I worked in the advertising industry in Chicago for 8 years at media planning agencies called Mindshare and Starcom, where I worked across a variety of different large clients in the corporate space. And from that experience, I learned so much. Every day was different, every challenge was unique, but I recognized that I wanted to learn more and make the change over to the marketing side. And the last client that I had at Mindshare was General Mills. And so I worked on the Pillsbury brand, El Paso, Progresso, and Totino's. And from that experience, I was introduced to brand managers, which I hadn't been in the room with on my previous clients. And the brand managers came to the conversations not only asking about the marketing and advertising that I was really familiar with and campaign work, but they started telling us about how the supply of the product was going to be in stores and if we were increasing or losing distribution and what that meant for the brand in terms of advertising. And so starting to be exposed to all these bigger marketing questions made me think, and I'm a perpetual learner. So I wanted to learn more. And the best way for me to do that and meet the job descriptions of a brand manager was to go back to business school. So I had no plans to go back to business school, but quickly studied for all the entrance exams and went back full time. I had the pleasure of going to the University of Michigan, which was my alma mater for undergrad as well. And from there, I took a summer internship with Mondelez. I worked on the gum brands and luckily got a return offer. And so now I'm here expanding my marketing knowledge and also learning how to be more of a general manager in the marketing space as well. So that's what I do right now.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit, because I'm a media buyer, so I'm in the advertising space. Tell us a little bit more about that. The difference between being like a brand manager and like a media buyer or in advertising. What's the big difference, and how does that where's the overlap as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So every role in brand management I found is really unique. It depends on the brand that you work on, and it depends on what the responsibilities are. But one of the big um, one of the big things I've learned is that while my media knowledge has really helped me to understand the communication side, the campaign side, I know all the language, I know the acronyms, I know how to work with the creative agencies. That's only one part of my job description because I'm also responsible for making sure that we have product on shelf at stores. And that requires so much more knowledge and working cross-functionally with my supply chain partners, my finance partners, understanding what's happening at our plants that we're producing the product in, making sure the product actually arrives to the stores and the stores are getting the quantities they're looking for, and working with our sales team to potentially expand distribution as well or analyze distribution issues that we may be having as in for our products at any given time. So it's still very much working as the hub of the wheel in this internal company, just like I was doing in the advertising side. So a lot of those soft skills translated over as well. But I think what I was used to in media is still just one smaller part of all of these other areas that I've had to develop skill set in as well. And when I say
Wow.
develop, I'm working on it. I'm a year in, so I still have a big ways to go. But it's great. It's great to see the bigger picture too.
Wow, that's so interesting. I work with a lot of marketing teams for food, and I didn't know that they were in charge. I didn't even know they were in charge of all that. I
It's a
had no
lot.
idea. Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, awesome. So you kind of now can see the whole picture.
Yes.
And keeping that in mind, what having now able to see that whole picture, how has that changed? I'm asking you because I'm curious. I'm
Of
immediately like,
course.
how does that change the way that you see advertising? How does
Yeah.
that modify it?
It's a big difference, I would say. For me, when I was growing up in advertising, I think everyone always looked at the con lions as like the pinnacle of what you could do in your career. And you would dream to have your campaign work on such a large stage. And even though campaign work usually tells such a great story, at the end of the day, if it's also not translating into sales, then the marketers aren't doing their job. So on this side, although I'm not as close to campaign work yet, I am working on some organic social. And even then, we're trying to understand how we're still moving the needle and how our frequency and messaging is still growing brand love with the consumer, that hopefully converts to sales. So everything is really still very much KPI driven on this side as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think understanding that at the end of the day, all messages are still in service of selling product because that's what our businesses are meant to do.
Right, right. Awesome, awesome. All right. So, what's the best thing about being in the marketing industry?
Oh, I think I mentioned this earlier. I am a perpetual learner. And so I'm always trying to learn more about different industries, different organizations, different people. And so from the marketing or advertising space, understanding so many different types of consumers is, of course, at the heart of everything we're doing. We have to know about our consumers, what they like to put the right products into market that meet their needs. But also, I think on the flip side, getting really deep into the technical details of my brand is really interesting too. So I mentioned earlier that a big part of brand marketing is also understanding the supply chain. So I know how our printing processes are to create our actual bags and the shippers they arrive in. And I've understood much more about how the production process works too. So making sure that no stone is left unturned in terms of building my own knowledge, I think is what gets me really excited about marketing. Because as soon as you move over to another brand or work for a different client, you start from ground zero again. You might have some transferable knowledge, but learning about how every business and brand operates is so interesting to me.
All right, awesome, awesome. All right, what sort of advice do you offer to people that are in the marketing industry right now?
I think keeping a pulse on the marketplace is really exciting, but what I also really enjoy doing outside of work is people watching. So I luckily was able to move to New York for this job. And even when I lived in Chicago, when I was on the train, I would just be watching people, understanding what media they're taking in, what types of snacks they're eating while commuting, understanding how the fashion trends are changing, and just making sure that I'm up to date on what's going on in the world outside of what's happening in the walls of my office or my apartment. So that I think is one of the best ways to get big ideas and start noticing trends before they even start happening in the research. So that's, I think, one of my big
So at
inspirations.
Mondelez,
Yeah.
let me follow it up. At Mondelez, um, the marketing teams, how often, what sort of research are they doing with their clients? How are they calling and doing surveys and talking to our clients? How does that process work? Is there some sort of interaction? Because you've been there
Yeah.
years, so surely you've
Yes.
kind of learned how some of those things work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a really robust insights team at Mondelez that spans both the brand teams and the shopper teams. And so our insights team works really closely with Nielsen, which was one of our largest research partners. And then we also do separate brand research. I think every brand's a bit different in terms of what partners they use. But we have ongoing brand metrics and KPIs, of course, that we're monitoring from a high level standpoint. But then we also have to do quite a bit of consumer research as well. As you can imagine, the consumer landscape is changing. So everything from using our large research partners to taking insights from our media partners and potentially even partnering with outside consulting organizations to understand how our consumers are changing as the consumers get younger, making sure that we're positioning ourselves for the right generations to come. I know there's so much talk in the marketplace about Gen Z and for every single brand. So understanding this new important consumer and how our work translates or changes to how they live their lives, I think is also a really important point too.
Awesome. Awesome. A lot of companies, you'd be surprised. They're actually larger companies with millions of dollars in revenue, and they don't know any of that information. Uh, but I figured Mondelez probably had a little bit better process
Yeah.
in
Oh,
place.
definitely.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. But you'd be surprised. Like there are lots of businesses that have managed to get large, and they don't even just call up their customers. So they
Yeah, that's
know,
fair.
yeah, and they don't even know what's going on. So that's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Nielsen as a partner and research groups, and yeah, I bet all of that is really interesting to dive into. I can see.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had the opportunity to watch some consumer research sessions a few weeks back, and just imagine all these kids with a pile of candy on the table and the things that they start talking about when their eyes just get so big and excited. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like as I'm doing this research, and uh, sometimes you kind of feel like a stalker. Because I mean, go online and look at
Yeah,
1,000 Facebook profiles and see what they like and what they don't like.
of
And I mean, it's
course.
interesting, but sometimes you kind of feel like, you know what? If this was not for business, someone would say you're a stalker.
I think of it as being a detective, maybe.
There you go. Yeah,
Because
no,
you're
that's what it
always
is.
you're
I'll be
always
honest.
in service of unpacking some other insights or trying to find the next thing that leads you to something else. So it's like a constant puzzle for me.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. That's what I like about marketing too. I like the puzzle, like trying to decipher, how can we, what's there's always some little insight that comes in that changes things,
Yes.
and that's what's the challenge. All right, so the next question, totally selfish for our podcast. What other
Okay.
successful people in marketing like yourself would you like to acknowledge that you think should be on the podcast?
Yes, I have a few great ideas. So I think I look to not only some of my great friends in Chicago that I grew up in advertising with that are still in advertising or moved over to the marketing side. So one of my closest friends is Amanda Villa, and she moved from the or from the advertising and content side, agency side, to now she's working in Ulta's marketing department.
Interesting.
Really cool, really exciting role at the leading forefront of beauty. And then my friend Paul Eiselstein is also still in Chicago, and he has a leadership role at Kelly Scott Madison Agency right now. He's worked on some really interesting regional clients and has a big book of large and small. So I think he's an interesting person to talk to as well. He's very in the media strategy too. So he'll have some hot takes. Another person that I thought of is Natalie Cantave, and she's one of the co-founders of a group called Marketing Women that was concepted as a small network to bring women in marketing together, where we can discuss questions, talk about so many different topics, and also self-promote as needed, which is really exciting because I think a lot of us are still pretty early in our careers and starting to navigate some of those larger questions, and having a nice small group that's trusted to go to is really helpful as well. And then also self-serving. I have two sisters and both also work in marketing. So
Okay.
yeah, so one of my sisters, Jackie Weber, she works at Mars Pet Care in their insights department. And then my sister Victoria works at a startup in Austin called App Orchid. So I think that's about five people that I'd love to see be on your podcast. And I think they all bring a really different perspective from large companies, retail space to small organizations, and even more CPG.
All right, so I'm going to reach out to them on LinkedIn, and you told
Do
me my
it.
name, so all right, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
All right, we have one more question that's just for fun.
Okay.
And I've had some people answer this question that are they're a little bit older that have been at I've been in marketing 35 years. So
Yeah.
so you get some interesting stuff that probably you might not have even heard of some of those things.
Okay.
But so tell me the oldest technology that you remember using
For marketing specifically or in life?
in life.
Okay. So the oldest technology I probably can remember using, I would say I grew up playing the piano, and we had an electric piano that took floppy disks and
Oh,
had
okay.
MIDI files that it would play from. So I would say the floppy disk is actually my oldest recollection of technology.
Oh wow. Okay. Floppy
Yeah.
disk. Yeah, I remember those. So my mom actually taught computer science in junior high.
Oh, nice.
And so I even had her as a teacher. And so I remember those floppy disks, and nobody had a PC in their house. She
Yep.
bought a PC, and we had those, I would play games off of those, floppy disks that they look now like, I don't know, like a plate or something like that, little plate.
Amazing.
Very,
Yeah, exactly. The little square with like the metal piece that you can move back and forth. We
yeah.
play with
Well,
them so much as kids.
those are the plastic ones. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
those
you
were
had a
fancy.
different one?
Yeah, I remember
Oh my
the
gosh.
ones that were made out of rubber.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah, before that, they were made out of
Wow.
rubber, and they had just a little tape in the center, and then covered with a
Interesting.
rubber case. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was that. And the and I tell everybody this, the first podcast I interviewed my mom. She works for Cisco. She doesn't work in marketing, but I just
Okay,
wanted
yeah.
to get, just try out the podcast. And I asked her this question. She said, the oldest technology I've ever used is a pencil. And I was like, come
That's
on now.
that's a pretty good answer.
That's what everybody says. I think it's a terrible answer. I
They're
didn't tell her
not
that.
wrong.
Yeah, yes, but yeah. So I think the oldest like actual technology,
Yeah.
is that we've gotten so far is the um the Commodore, which was this computer, I think, where you would like, no, not the Commodore, it's another one, but they would send you would just program games. So they would send you like a
Hmm.
little computer, and then they would send you instructions, and you had to program out the game based on the instructions, and then it wouldn't work. And so you have to go through and try to go down line by
Interesting.
line. And I'm like, why would anyone find that to be fun? You know, I don't, but that was back in the day. So it was novel,
Okay.
it was cool. I don't know. I think that's the oldest that we've heard.
Interesting.
Someone mentioned the other day, what did they mention? Like, uh, they used to have these phones that would go in your car
Huh.
that were not cell phones.
Yep.
Somehow work. I don't know exactly how that was. So that was an
I feel
interesting.
like I've seen that in a movie where it's like built into the dashboard and you can like pick it up. But that was like very James Bond.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
My wife is from Argentina, and
Very cool.
I find it interesting. In Argentina, most people up until the 90s, you could barely get a phone line in your house. So just a regular phone
Interesting.
line. Yes, because
Wow.
the government, it was, a government thing, and they didn't privatize it until the 90s. So like you had to like bribe
Fascinating.
somebody in the government to get them to come put a phone line in your house.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd ask my father-in-law, I was like, well, how do people get in contact with
Yeah.
each other? And he said, we make signal fires.
Oh boy.
No, he was joking, but you just show up. I mean, I don't know. You just go
Yeah.
press the doorbell. So anyway, that was interesting. But anyways, all right. So we try to keep our podcast short. Thanks for coming on today, Jen. I really appreciate it. You can catch our podcast. We stream it live all over social media, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. We also release it on YouTube at the same hour. And Jen, thanks so much for being on. Really appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Share this with a friend. Give us some love so that we want to get this out to as many marketing folks as we can. Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a great
Jared.
day.